commercial breaks. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, we're gonna drop it in. Just okay. We're rolling.
Okay.
Camera, we love you. You'll last through the whole episode. Hi,
Hello.
welcome to the Common Sense Podcast. It's good to be here.
Absolutely.
How you doing, man?
You know, it's a good day. Today's definitely been just like an eye opener, like a day. And what I mean by that is kind of just like, you ever wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or you're just like tired? You wake up. I'm pretty sure you see the meme of Chris. What was it? James Brown, where it's like you waking up with no air conditioning. It's like,
Yeah. That's how it's felt in Rancho
yeah, that's how it feels. Even with the AC on,
all day.
and it sucks because
You've
you
had
wake
it
up
on
and you're
all
just
day.
like, I need my water. Not only spiritually but physically. So that's kind of what it is. But other than that, it's a good day. What about you? How's your day been?
Well, it's been awesome, man. I mean, we shooting early today. That's
true.
what's cool. I like these earlier shoots. This makes it nice and different feel.
Yeah,
You know, so yeah, I'm doing well today, man. I'm doing well.
that's good.
What's new with you?
These and ones.
Those were everywhere in my elementary school. Those were
Okay.
that was like all the rage in elementary school. And one shoes, it was crazy. Do you know what and one is?
No, not really. I'm gonna be honest. I'm more of a runner than I am a basketball player. I don't really play basketball. Funny enough, we'll jump to that later. But tell me.
You remember how I showed you that big dude throwing crazy passes? Escalade? For you guys who know what and one is, you know Escalade. You know what's up with Escalade. You remember that?
Jeez. I'd like to say yes, but no.
We were right here just going through memes, and I was showing him and one highlight of Escalade. It's a dude who's like over 300 pounds dunking on people,
Oh, I remember that guy. Yeah.
throwing no look passes to people. That's what and one basketball was. It wasn't about how big you were. They have a guy named the Professor. He's if you ever saw Spider-Man balling up in the park, you know,
Yeah.
somebody in a Spider-Man suit just
Yeah.
crossing people up. The Professor was doing that. He's one of the most famous people for doing that. So that's another
fair.
and one player. So and one was like a renegade basketball league that was just like all about the dribbling, all about the flash, all about making it look as cool as possible. So
Mm.
it's really dope that you got those shoes on.
Yeah. Our church is actually putting on a basketball tournament today, so I'm gonna be playing defense.
He's our Drew Holiday. This is our Ron Artest right here, our Michael Cooper, Nicholas Medina,
Just
about
give
to
me my
lock
ring.
some people down. So
Give me
yeah,
my ring.
bring home that dub, bro. Bring home the trophy. We already saw the trophy,
Yeah.
so just go
Yeah,
get that
We're
trophy.
just gonna go get it. We're gonna go after it.
Don't let us down. I'll let you know if he let us down at a later date. But
I'm gonna
yeah,
let
it's
you down.
it's great to be here. We're gonna bring up our product of the day right now, and I wanted to give a shout out to Ninja Illustration. So that's actually a collaborator that I recently got in touch with. We have some stickers on the way of the podcast pub Zion. Tried to get him to sit right here in the middle, but he was not having it today. So we have these awesome pictures that we'll have our great director Adrian post into the video when the time's right. But they're going to be available for sale. They're going to be available at some pop-ups, so I'll let you know where we're going to be at so we can get you some of those podcast pub stickers. It's Ninja Illustration on Instagram. He also goes by Endo Ninja 16 if you want to check him out on IG and TikTok. On TikTok, it's really cool. He has his animation. He lines up his animations with anime. So it's really artistic stuff he's doing.
Okay.
He's available for some services if you need album covers, if you need stickers, if you need anything animated. He's so good. He got this whole project done within 3 days. So it's a incredible thing. He hit me up on Instagram at random asking me if I needed an album cover. And I was like, you know what? I actually need your services or something else. So it was such a coincidence that happened, you know. It was very much I believe God brought it to me, you know. So shout out to Ninja Illustrations and Indo Ninja 16. Thank you for hooking up the Common Sense Podcast with those beautiful stickers. So What are we gonna get into today, Nick? What do you think?
I think it's important for us to re-enter why we're doing this. I think it's important for us to restate our mission statement. And what is our mission statement, Peter?
You find God when you find common sense.
I think it's extremely important, especially today where we live in a world that's without morality. I think that's something we could touch upon first, man. I mean, what's your view when it comes to the word morality before it's even used in a sentence? Like, how do you view morality?
I think morals. It's a funny thing. So like even the concept of you find God when you find common sense. Morals are something that really do take having a middle ground with. In order to even have anything like a moral code or to have honor, something like honor is very intangible.
Mm-hmm.
So morals help us stay close to these intangible things that we value in our lives. So when I think of what's the word, integrity.
Mm.
To have integrity, you need strong moral values, meaning you're not the type who's going to lie for nothing. So white lies. I know that's something in the past I had trouble with, wanting to fit in at school, wanting to be the cool guy. That's something that a lot of people do have struggles with. If you're willing to lie, it shows that you have low morality. Oh, and willing to lie for nothing as well. It's something that really shows meaning, like you're just lying to build yourself up. You're lying to make yourself look like you're above somebody else. Things like that. That's why I think morality helps us stick with that. It's like, why not lie?
Mm-hmm.
If it's going to get you to look
Yeah.
better, if it's going to
Yeah.
get you the girl, if it's going to get you the favor of everybody else, why not do it? But obviously, it's because we have integrity. It's because we have valor. It's
Mm-hmm.
because honor
Yeah.
isn't something that I could just throw to you, somebody in the room, It's not something I could hand you my honor, as I see Nico sitting over there, Can't just go hand him over there some of my honor right now. That's something that, in order to even prove that I have some sort of honor and be like, okay, like, what does it even mean to honor in the first place? I know there's a strong argument to get a little personal here. In my family, my grandfather just passed in 2022. Thankfully, nothing COVID related. He lived a long, healthy life till he was 94. But we're having trouble honoring my grandfather's memory. There's a lot of people who believe he would do things a certain way. But then there's people like me who my whole life I was raised under his household. So I have a very strong understanding of what he would have done as far as finances.
Got it.
As far as possessions.
I see.
As far as dictating how the whole family would go. He has a understanding that of life from like a farmer's perspective.
Oh wow.
He grew up in the Great Depression era.
Jeez.
So like he traveled. He always told me stories about his travels as when with the
that's fun.
Yeah, and
well,
not fun at the time.
Not fun, but I would say this interesting.
The Great Depression was fun.
It's interesting though. The Great Depression was fun. Well, I think for us, it's because you have a childlike heart, and it's like hearing a harmonica being played over the fire, and it's like hearing these stories that you think are mystical, but actually did happen. So that's why it's a bit fun. That's the reason I bring that up.
Yeah,
because it's like, Grandpa, teach me what was it like back in the day. Like, oh, I struggled with this. No, you did. Yes, I did.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. God bless grandparents.
The knowledge he passed down to me was very fun. The things he passed down to me were very fun. And I would say he even, unknowing that he played piano, he grew up playing piano. That's something not a lot of my family knows. But I got to know that because of the proximity I was born with him, the relationship I had with him, the singing voice he had. In my family, there's no other musicians besides me. But back in the day, if you ask like my brother or my sister, you could catch my grandfather and my grandmother singing a bunch of different Mexican songs, a bunch of Vicente Fernandez throughout the house, a bunch of amazing songs, and they sounded incredible together. Oh. So those are the type of things that I would say in order to honor his memory, you'd have to be there. So as far as you find God when you find common sense, the morality in our family, in order for us to honor him and have the morals that would align with him, we'd have to have an understanding of that. We'd have to know what he has, or what he left behind, what he would have lived like day by day. If he was here, would he approve of things? So that's kind of my ramble for what morality is, as far as honor. In order to have honor, you need some sort of morality. So to line that up.
Thank you for sharing that. And what was your grandfather's name?
Rigoberto Herrera.
Ricoberto Herrero. Was it
Herrera?
Herrera. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Herrera. Está bien.
Yeah, and so to get back to the mission statement, you find God when you find common sense. I think a middle ground is what common sense is. So something to really think about is like abstinence is the only true form of birth control. It's like that's such a hard topic to even dive into, to even want to talk about. But the reason that would take common sense to deal with, right? Or the reason that would take some sort of understanding of God to deal with is because without any sort of knowledge of God, people would just be so stuck on wanting to give into their fleshly desires.
Sensuality.
Extremely
sensual, because it's natural. It's natural. If we feel hungry, we're going to eat. Right. If we're thirsty, we're going to drink. When you come of a certain age in which, I don't know what it is now, is it 13 to 15 is when puberty usually hits?
Yeah.
Depending if, I don't think there's been any cases.
For some 12, people, there's cases of people way earlier.
Way earlier, outside of the norm, the outliers on that end?
No, sir.
No, for most, really.
Yes. From my understanding of basic biology back in the day, is everybody's bodies are different. So there's some girls who have their periods at 10 years old.
Wow.
There's some boys who they start growing, hair all over their body at like 11. I've had a beard since I was. If you ask anybody who knows me, I've had a mustache and a beard my whole life. So
fair. Well, I think to the point on that, and I think when you come to realization and knowledge between good and evil, as far as quoting the Bible goes in early Genesis, you start to see first and foremost the purity of things go away as a childlike heart. And I think it talked about that actually in Genesis, in which when Eve ate the apple, and then her eyes were opened up, and then she introduced it to her husband. Then he ended up eating it. And then from there, they ended up looking at each other, and they noticed they were naked. So up until that point, there was absolute purity, and there wasn't a sense or even a hint of impurity, because even though they were naked, that was how they naturally were. There wasn't this impurity that was ever entered to them. And I think ultimately the common sense is when you reach a certain age in today's times, biologically, you start to look at people and things from a very skewed point of view. And on the topic of roughly abstinence, it's something that the word is not even in most people's minds. It's literally hidden. The word purity back in the 50s was not only talked about, but it was widely expressed as compared to today.
Right. Concepts like waiting till marriage and things like that.
Yeah, and people messed around. Yeah, but there was still a societal push of, hey, this is cool. This is what we're doing. Right. This is the norm. And I think that's the reason why people become a bit nostalgic towards that.
Right.
I mean, I've talked to a few women in which some of them are like, I really wish that we could go back to those days. I really personally wish it. I mean, don't get me wrong, each era has its own problems, but it's really, when it comes to this topic itself, how many issues would it solve if people were abstinent?
Bro, that's the point. That's the whole point of what we're saying with you find God when you find common sense. Is that abstinence would answer the amount of children who come from broken homes.
Yep, talk about it.
In Baldwin Park, California, there's a lot of us who just don't have the dad, don't have the mom, are raised by people who don't. It feels like they're not really there to be our elders. That's a very common thing, sadly. And if the generations before us were just considerate enough to be like, hey, do I even want to have a child? If people were considerate enough to say, hey, do I really want to possibly contract an STD? Things like that. The amount of STDs everywhere.
Jeez.
Apparently, it's like 1 in every 10 people have
Oh my
herpes.
gosh. Ew.
That's one of the grossest things I've ever heard. And I don't believe it still, because I don't believe I've never had to get tested for anything like that. Thank God.
Thank
You
God.
know, no shame to anybody who's had
Of
to
course.
go through things like that. But you would resolve so many of the issues. I'm pretty sure anybody who's gone through any sort of trauma
Yeah.
with STDs would say, hey, avoid that at all costs. I remember when I was younger, on the Real World, throwback,
Throw away
throwback to MTV. A girl had got
My
mono.
MTV.
A girl got mono on the show.
Oh shoot.
And so
Kissing's a
mono
little
is
too
something that
much.
comes from kissing,
Yeah.
not
yeah.
even sex.
I could talk about.
So it's not even a STD,
Oh,
as we're
boy.
saying. But even kissing, back in the day, abstinence meant you didn't even kiss. You didn't even hold hands from the time that he's talking about.
Yep.
Holding hands was frowned upon. Holding
music.
hands. So like that's
Oh my
the
God.
incredible thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't hold. I don't think holding hands is as bad
Yeah,
as
there's nothing.
people think. I think that's kind of an overkill personally.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're talking about finding that
Mm.
middle ground, finding that morality,
Mm-hmm.
it's so we can push together a better society for our kids.
That's right.
It's so that we can have a better life for us. I think we'd be happier in a society where like we can actually say, hey, well, in our society we don't sleep around.
There's trust there.
There's
There's trust, and there's such a weight off of a father's conscience
Yeah.
and a mother's worry. And that's even a different conversation. But ultimately, I think in today's society, men who are fathers who actually want to be present in their children's lives, it's a major issue when they have a daughter. Because the issue is, this is my daughter. What have I done in my past? Who is going to be the guy that either is going to be me? I believe personally that each and every man wants somebody who's either better than them to date their daughter. And nobody's worthy enough of it because they want them to prove themselves, because that's your little girl. I think that's the biggest that's the biggest thing. While at the same time, you also want your son to find a good woman, which is now I think a mother's struggle, because it's like, okay, I can vet, because the dad will be easily won over depending on the type of girl, but the mom, she has sixth sense, man.
That's the harder one.
They just know. Women know. They have a sixth sense for things. Satellite radio, Snapchat, viewing you on your iPhone. Hence the reason I got a Samsung.
Last episode we talked about men and women are different for the better. That's one way.
They are.
Dad would be more passive about who the son dates, whereas a mother would be a lot more stringent
Bring it
about
home to
who it
mama.
is. And vice versa, where if it's a daughter, the father would be super
Ooh.
protective of her,
Ooh.
whereas the mom would be kind of, like,
Man,
oh,
who is
this
young
man's
man?
handsome and this
No.
and that. So it's so abstinence is something that would help us. Again, we'd be a lot more comfortable with
Would.
who our children are friends with. We'd be a lot more
about that.
comfortable about going house to house. We wouldn't be so scared of the society we live in. We'd have a
It's
lot
true.
clearer mind just walking around with the people that we live with. As far as, talking about America and just in the world in general, I think it's something that would benefit us. Last point we want to touch on with you find God when you find common sense. Self-control is the answer to obesity. Now, we've talked about obesity, I think, multiple times now. And I think it hits me heavy in the heart because I come from a family where diabetes is heavy in our family. So I'm big on my fitness now at 30. I'm big on what I eat now at 30. But it's such a big deal to me to talk about that. So where does that even apply to with common sense? Is a lot of people are trying to change the way we look at obesity and say, oh yeah, it's just a mental health issue.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's you were just born that way. You were just born to be 5'5" and 260 pounds. That's me. Like I that's where I sit before you today. You were just born to look like that. You were just born to be overweight.
Mhm.
Those are things that are absolute rubbish to
Yeah.
teach people. It's not the correct thing to teach people. You can go talk to any dietitian or any buddy who has the best interest of people,
Yeah.
they'll say, hey, there is, I have a spina bifida. That's a birth defect. So it does affect the way I can work out. It does affect the way that I can get my fitness in check. But one thing that has changed my health for the better has been what I eat. It has been having self control to know that, hey, the healthiest food doesn't taste the best compared to Lucky Charms, compared to Fruity Pebbles, compared to Cocoa Puffs, compared to Rice Krispies, compared to I can keep going. Should I keep going with the snacks?
Yep.
Compared to Bimbo, all the Bimbo products, all the awesome
Not the
Mexican
Bimbo.
pastries, compared to
Está bien.
conchas,
Oh.
compared to a torta, compared to a burrito, compared to Alberto's, compared to McDonald's, compared to Jack in the Box. Healthy food does not even taste in the realm that some of these things taste,
Tiny
right?
tacos, Jack in the
Unless
Box.
you have a good cook, but that's not what I'm saying.
That's true.
A piece of kale does not taste like a piece of fruit roll up.
True.
They don't compare.
That's true.
But obviously that's going to take the self-control, knowing that, hey, I'm sugar addicted. You can hear it in my voice. I've obviously been sugar addicted. But that piece of broccoli is actually going to save your life. All you people dreaming of a 6-pack right now, that piece of broccoli is going to get you there.
It's true.
Every piece of broccoli, every carrot is going to finally get you there.
I wanted to touch upon that because I remember I ended up mentioning to you guys about my personal fitness. So thank you for bringing up sugar. So we had a friend of ours, Alexis, and I go and I talk to him. I'm like, you know what, man? I have such a busy schedule and yada, 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 yada. And he started to give me, solutions for it. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to be able to hit all these solutions. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take one step at a time. So the first thing I ended up doing, since we're talking on sugar, is I started really looking at every product that I had, regardless of total carbohydrates or the calories. I was like, okay, we're going to keep that in mind, but we're going to focus on the sugar. Let's just attack this thing. I ended up finding, and thank God for Arizona. Love you. I'd love to be sponsored
Arizona
by you
green
guys.
tea.
Diet Arizona green tea.
Yep.
We went shopping at Stater Brothers. Love you, Stater Brothers. And Peter was like, Nick, try this. And I was like, you know what, bro? Like, I don't know how much sugar does it have. It had less than 1 gram of sugar. Ever since then, I've been addicted, and I mean it, addicted to that drink. And
Yes.
so good. So much so, I'm willing to even go right here. Started to actually lose my gut on this end. Progress.
This man came in talking about being fat. He came in like
That was
angry with me about his gut, and I didn't know how to take it fully, but you
were graceful. You were very graceful.
Now that he's cut the sugar out, for somebody like Nick, it's affected everything for him. We were in here doing push-ups. We have in our household, we have a bi-weekly family time.
Let's do it.
In our household, we like to come together just to have fun together, just to check in with each other, discuss bills, things like that.
Yep.
It helps keep unity in the house, resolve any tensions, make sure we uphold household rules. And we were in here doing push-ups, in here doing planks. I was sick at the time, so I was not doing push-ups.
Yeah.
I was not doing planks.
Yeah.
But Nick was in here doing the push-ups and the planks. He got hyped, and Hulkamania ripped his shirt. This is not a joke. This is living with Nick. Nick
Very
literally roided out, ripped out his shirt.
You know what it is, brother? Let me tell you something here. Dingleberry, it's David
And
Perry.
so he starts doing his his push-ups, and his abs are coming out. Like he's like looking ripped. And I was like, bro, I've been telling him that's been there, and it's all about diet. You hear it all the time. Diet's 80%, exercise is 20%. The older you get, the more true that becomes for people in their physical youth. You know, it's not always the case. Sometimes working out is 100%, and you could eat whatever you want. But as you get older, you're gonna see.
Yep.
Diet is everything. Diet is everything. For somebody who only eats well but doesn't work out, they're gonna see within 2 weeks they're gonna be looking crazy different. So it's incredible the impact that just having some self-control in your eating can have. If you want to look better, just eat better. It's just that simple. And once you start eating better, you're gonna see like, oh yeah, being sugar addicted is absolutely crazy. Changes the way you think. It changes the way you crave things. It
It's
changes
true.
the way you once you start calorie counting, it changes the way you want to eat. It
It's very
changes it.
true.
Nick had some Nutella bites in the room. I
Was
don't know
it?
if you ever had
Oh
Nutella
God,
bites.
yeah.
I
Oh,
had never had them. So
never again.
delicious.
So good.
He told me, "Yeah, you eat two, and they're 140 calories." I was like, "Oh, bro, I'm
I was
done
like,
with
take it
that."
from me, Pete. He's
I
like,
was like,
what?
"I'm cool with that, bro. Like, I don't like that's gonna destroy me."
Oh,
Because
dude.
that means four of them is already like as much
Ugh.
as one peanut butter jelly sandwich. Like that's how crazy that
They were
works,
really
guys.
good,
Once
but
you can
still.
understand that a peanut butter jelly sandwich by just one peanut butter jelly sandwich can literally fill you for like a good 2 hours. Like that's you won't want to have four peanut butter jelly
It's true.
sandwiches.
It's
You'll be
greed.
able to portion control. Water makes you feel better. Once you realize that water without soda will will make you have you able to run outside without losing your breath. It'll have you feeling good just waking up instead of drinking 64 ounces of soda.
Ugh.
You'll see it will
Oof.
change your life. I don't even want to touch my beer drinkers and stuff. I'll leave you guys alone for today, but we're gonna get into it. Trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me. But yeah, self control is the answer to obesity, and that all falls under you find God when you find common sense. All these things are gonna get you closer to God, being more self controlled, having sexual purity, being abstinent. All that's gonna lead you back to God. Having morals, because a world without morality is a fallen world. That's why the world's so crazy, guys. If you ever wake up like, why is this world so crazy? Because we don't have morals anymore, guys. So having morals, all these things are gonna lead you right back to God. And once you see how easy it is, it's gonna be like, okay, well, let's try to exercise this. Let's get this ready, and that's where the Bible comes in. But
Mhm.
we'll save the preaching for Sunday.
Yeah.
Come with us on Sunday if you're down.
Come.
But that's what we're gonna give to the mission statement for today. We're definitely
Absolutely.
gonna touch more. Please respond to us what you think, what you get out of it. Help us understand our mission statement a bit if there's anything you get.
Yeah.
For this time, we're gonna move on to our next segment called Uncommon Sense. The last episode we talked a little bit about with Uncommon Sense. The last time we went over this, we went over common sense is very uncommon these days. Going over manners, respecting people. Today, the topic for uncommon sense is going to be talent only gets you so far. My brother Nick, what do you think about that? Talent only gets you so far.
I think everybody has an inherent talent. I think it just comes into recognizing that some people can walk into a room and they can control that room and demand that room, but they can only hold that room's attention for a limited time. Whereas if somebody practice it that isn't naturally extroverted, but they put in so much time and so many hours, that exercise over time is going to allow you to control that room in a more detailed manner. And what am I saying with this is ultimately you can tap into your talent and it can get you far, but there's a limit because you refuse to practice and go into it, whether it's singing, whether it's running, whether it's just being naturally confident, whether it's being cool headed, you know, touching on many different areas. But people have inherent talents. It's just how far do they want to actually practice them daily in order to make them better? Because I think most people can just walk through life with a certain arrogance or cockiness that I have this talent. But then you have somebody who works extremely hard that can outshine them. And then it kind of
Right.
messes with people that have the talent.
That's what Oxford Dictionary says. It says that talent is a natural aptitude or skill.
Mm,
So it's just a natural skill that you have,
mm.
something that comes easily. That's what talent is.
Yeah, so that's all my thoughts when it comes to that. I mean, what's your thoughts when you would define talent?
For me, talent is something that I've never felt I have a lot of.
Really?
Talent has always been something that I feel eludes me. Where there's this quarterback in the NFL named Ron Jaworski, and I got to know him as an ESPN head. That's how I got to know who he was. He was somebody who he became a football analyst that I think he passed away a few years ago, and just think the same to watch ESPN without Jaws, you know. So he said he used to see a lot of talented players go through the NFL. He was an Eagles quarterback for a long
Oh,
time. And he said that I may not be the most talented, but one thing you're not going to do is outwork me.
I love that.
So I remember hearing that as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that always affected me. It was like, okay, so I don't have to be the most talented. I just have to be the hardest worker. So that's always been something where, as far as for me, a lot of people look at me and they're like, "Hey, you're talented, Peter. You're very talented." Um, I
It's
make
true.
music. Um, I have been playing. I've been in music since I was 14. I rap, and I've been studying. Anybody who's been in the California public school system, we've been doing English since we were kids. We've been learning our ABCs the whole time. I got really into poetry and things
Mm.
like that. When it comes to this podcast stuff, I've always watched. I'm a big podcast advocate. Joe Rogan Experience is my favorite podcast by far. I spent hours watching and listening to podcasts of all different sorts. Um, when it comes to Bible studies, people always tell me like, "Oh, you lead them so well," and things like that. And that's just been from my mentors, Lou Jack Martinez, Chris Martin, Brian Clark, Eduardo Esparza. Some of the people who I've watched who study the Bible very well with people. I've just, I've taken a lot of time to just adapt from other people. I think I'm good at imitating other. I've learned how to imitate others because I'm not, again, I don't believe I'm the most talented. I don't believe I am. I have a lot of just natural aptitude towards things. But there's something called the rule of 10,000 hours.
Mm.
I learned this from Method Man and the Wu-Tang Clan. They talk about multiple times 10,000 hours. Is you're not a real MC until you've put in your 10,000 hours.
Jeez.
And so what that means is whatever you consider to be a skill of yours, a craft of yours, an art of yours, something you take seriously, if you haven't dedicated 10,000 hours of time towards that, you cannot call yourself a master at it. So that's just to master something. And that's such a hard thing to live up to. But when I think of all the times, as far as just rapping, all the times I spent just writing in my room with no one around, the amount of sleep I traded in order to just write, the amount of fun I chose to forego just to sit down and learn how to sing, just to the amount of times I spent in a practice room. The reason I don't consider myself a tuba player, which is the first instrument I ever played, I don't believe I got anywhere near 10,000 hours practicing my tuba. I believe I got somewhere around 3 or 4. So I was, not bad, but I don't consider myself a tuba player because there's so many masters of it that shout out to my boy Pubs, who there's some people who are just so good at it. So I have a friend named Eric who, me and him, we would sit down and do the same practices all the time. And he got so good at things so quick, it would blow me away. Like, we spent the same amount of time practicing, and he got so much better,
Yeah.
so much quicker. It made me want to give up all the time.
I know that feeling.
So like after I got over the depression of how good he was, it was like I knew there was more work for me to do. So it goes back to that idea of, you may be more talented, but you're not going to outwork me. Not to be in competition with them, but internally is I know I need to work. I know there's more that I can get to because this is where I'm at, but I want to be here. So just that idea of there's more work to be done, that's where the 10,000 hours get put in. And once you find a passion, for me, music is like such a big passion. It's 10,000 hours isn't enough. 10,000 hours doing music is not enough music for me. Like I need 20, I need 30, 40, 50. And so that's really something that's allowed me to master the craft of that. That's something that once you put in 10,000, people see the result. Meaning when you come, now that I'm sitting in front of you, I've definitely spent, I believe, 10,000 hours watching Joe Rogan. I don't even doubt it. I've been watching Joe Rogan maybe since I was too young to be watching Joe Rogan, you know? Like, I remember when Nick Diaz actually made the fight where he said Joe Rogan podcast, train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day. I remember when he made that quote and Joe Rogan started using it on his podcast. So I remember when that first started. And so I've been watching podcasts for years, technically, and I never really thought of it. That's kind of what gave me the confidence to sit in front of you and even have this going back and forth, you know? So is there anything you've spent 10,000 hours doing?
Yes, that's running. But first and foremost, just to touch upon that, this man is very talented because of his dedication and his craft. I'm actually surprised you have that mentality, because that's the mentality I would never have pictured you to have at all. Because the way you carry yourself, that's the reason why. So I'm a bit in disbelief that you think of yourself that way. So I'm gonna.
We can come back to it later.
Yeah, we can come back to it later. But you mentioned 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours, folks, is about 416 days. Let's say 417 days.
It's at least a whole year.
It's more than a year, 365, 417. For me, my passion was running. I say was because it was a great way for me to just loosen up.
How great was it?
It was a high.
Ooh.
It's a very, very beautiful high when you're hitting the tread. And not the treadmill. I'm just talking about just hitting the tread as far as, and what I mean by tread is just you're in the zone. You're just hitting the asphalt depending on the shoes you have. For me, I needed more of a stability because I pronated inward, which means every time I took a step, it was just more inward. And I needed to find a way to balance that with stability shoes. Went to Run Republic sometimes, Snail's Pace. I had Saucony. Was one of the main brands I had. If Hoka was around back then, I would have probably done Hoka, even though Hoka was a little overpriced. Saucony, it's funny because
these are running shoes you're talking about, right?
If I can get, I believe I may be off as far as the brand's name. It's been a minute. Forgive me. But they used to have a deal in which if you wore your pair until a certain point, you can turn it back in for a free pair. When you pay $130 for shoes, you're
gross.
Definitely going to abuse that. Okay.
Oh,
folks?
yes.
Guaranteed. So we would buy like one or two pairs and it would be like a year almost later. We returned the shoes. My mom, shout out Samira Medina. Love you, mama. Phenomenal shopper, by the way. Taught me everything I know regarding shopping and looking for good deals. And anywho, going back to running, I would use these shoes and it would really help me. And running allowed me to feel everything, sense everything, just be in the moment. You know, no matter what I was going through, it was just a very, very, very easy way for me to just relate to life, is just going and running. And it wasn't because I was, quote unquote, as people would like to say, runners just run for their problems. I was running towards my problems, but I was dealing with the emotional baggage by running. That's really what it is. So for me, when I stopped running, and every athlete goes through this, I can guarantee you, even Tom Brady, which I'm thinking he's going through the absolute worst, when he finally decides to officially retire.
He retired.
Sure.
Not in his head, but he retired physically.
Okay, but I can guarantee you that man is going through some demons. The reason being is because every athlete, when you transition into a civilian life, and I mean this in a civilian life. Civilian meaning that you don't perform at the level
the war's over, go home.
Well, it's because every man has a war within them. Every athlete does. It's like if Serena Williams decided that she doesn't want to ever touch a tennis racket again. That's a part of your life. I put 7 years I don't count 8 years because I went through a terrible season. Yeah, it was like, boop, and then boom, the last one because my body was tired.
So you did 80,000 hours or 70,000 hours.
I ran six days out of the week in high school, average from 40 to 60 miles a week.
Did you say you ran 6 days out of the week?
6 days out of the week. Yeah, bro. It was every single day. And there was morning practice. And some days afterwards, I would ride my bike with fat books afterwards. And then people would wonder, how is he so fast when you had to literally have an extra 25 to 35 pound weight as you're riding your bike?
I'm terrified of that.
That's what I had to do.
By 6 days.
I was terrified. So much so, I was so exhausted. Little funny side story on this end, as I learned how to take cuts and bruises really easily. Now, there's this one, but we're going to talk about this one. Most people can't see it. This actually opened up. So, funny story. I was exhausted after afternoon practice. I did morning practice and we did afternoon practice. I had my bike. This was at Sunny Hills High School in Fullerton.
This better be funny.
It is now. So I ended up basically going down and just heading back to my house. And it's about 3 miles back, and I'm on my bike. And for some reason, I'm just in my mind thinking about something, and my handlebar hits one of the light posts, and the handlebar just goes like this. And when that happened, I immediately thought of Talladega Nights, Ricky Bobby. I'm up in the air. This ain't good. And I go up in the air, and I'm like, oh, shoot. On the left-hand side is where traffic is coming, and I'm either going to get hit by a car, or on the right side is where here's the sidewalk. Left side, right side is where there's a bunch of bricks that are being laid, and they're all jaggedy. They look like razors. So I'm like, either way, I'm either getting stabbed or I'm getting run over. Here's what we're going to do. Put my hands right here, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Boom, hit it. This ripped open, and I'm bleeding. And I'm like, I'm fine. Because mentally, as this is bleeding, I'm thinking, am I going to die here? What is going on? Is this it for me? Because those spikes sucked, okay? They sucked. All right? I took it like a champ. And I'm just bleeding, and it's all over. I'm wearing white. And I'm just like...
Where's it funny? Hold on. Just give me the funny part already, because that's...
I survived.
Okay, that's
amazing. I survived. And people were like, what happens to Nick? It's like, what are these crazy stories?
I'm glad that's the comedy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I ended up making it back home. We ended up having to get stitches here, and then, they had a needle, but
this happened
crazy.
because you were exhausted from running.
I was exhausted. Another time was I was on the trails and past the nursing home on the railroad tracks in Fullerton. Anybody who's in the area knows of them. And I ended up falling, and I have a bit of an arrow here, and I opened up my my skin a bit, and it was bleeding. So I was basically running like this on the way back, bleeding all over the floor as I went from class to class, because I was like, nah, I don't want my mom to come pick me up. I'm fine. Just bandaging myself with like tape and everything else. Yeah, it was wild, man. It was a wild, wild time.
So that all happened while you were practicing?
No, one of them was when I was practicing. The other one was after, but they're not correlated. They're not on the same day. It was just different times. I have plenty of stories, man. I have plenty of stories. If you guys want to know Nick's crazy stories, let me go. But I've practiced learning how to take a hit. I've been elbowed in the middle of races where I can't breathe. This is before I was a Christian, and then just sock the guy basically right there for doing that. Or you get spiked.
Oh, that's messed up.
Depending. You can tell if it's purposeful spike or it's on accident. You as a runner, you tend to know this. There is the difference, because if it's an accident, you're like, I'm not gonna feel it right now. I'm fine. If it's purposeful, then you're like, oh, I'm gonna get you. No. You can tell because of the depth it goes into. Because if you have a spike, speaking of shoes, and you're really you accidentally hit somebody, you're gonna go like this. You can feel flesh on that.
That's crazy.
And Saved by the Bell.
So talent only gets you so far.
It's true.
That's one of the big things.
Practice.
Something I've always heard throughout my throughout my life is that there's levels to this.
Ooh.
I don't know if you've ever heard that saying.
I've heard that.
Usually when you hear that, it's when you put in the hours, right? You put in your 10,000. You think you've mastered it. And all of a sudden you're in the room with somebody who's just in another realm of mastery of what you do.
So true.
Like it's like if I was sitting in a room thinking I'm the best musician and then Prince walked in. It's like it's like, oh, I'm not a master of anything. It's like if who's a runner you look up to?
You gotta put me on the spot like that.
Yes, sir.
There's really nobody that I see. I can touch on Steve Prefontaine. I could touch on Matthew Centrowitz for the 800, but okay, I'll say this. Jim Ryan. Most people don't know who Jim Ryan is. I would adventure everybody to Google him. He was a U.S. congressman. He was one of the few individuals in high school before going to college, I believe, to break the 4 mile. He was one tall dude. I actually had the pleasure of shaking his hand, this hand right here, and getting a t-shirt signed by him at Run Club off of Imperial Boulevard near the 57 freeway in Berea. It was actually really, really cool to be able to meet him. Very cool, inspiring individual. Man of faith. Wrote a book, which I have not read, even though I had it signed to this day. Don't get me started on that. Executive functions, ADHD. The reason I look up to him is because of the fact that everything we just spoke about, as far as putting in the talent, or not putting in the talent, but utilizing the talent you have and taking it further with the 10,000 hours he's done. He woke up and had his coach tell him, you're going to run up the hill about 100 times. And that hill had a very steep incline, about maybe, let's just put it this way. It's just a very steep incline. And for runners, it sucks when we go on a steep incline, okay? And if you're tall and you don't have the right running shoes, not like the stuff we have now, and we're talking like old school, we're waffle pressed, hashtag Phil Knight and Nike. Even before then, man, it sucks to go do that. And it's hot to go and do that. And you're tired. And you have to ask yourself, do I really want to be there? Do I really want this? And for a man like that to accomplish everything that he has as a man of faith is what stood out to me the most. The accolades first when I first met him, but over time I started to respect his faith more and more over that. So I would say Jim Ryan. I hope he's still alive. I haven't Googled him in a minute, so, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that when it comes to like my church and things like that, man, I think I know a lot. There's some days where I'm like, oh yeah, I know a lot about the Bible. But then we hear like a sermon from Mike Patterson.
Fire.
All of a sudden, my knowledge goes out the window. It's like, okay, well, I definitely didn't know anything about that.
You know.
Mike Patterson is a preacher who loves to talk about like demonic possession, and
It's really good.
he goes into crazy things where it's like, oh man, I don't think I've ever looked into anything like that. So there's just levels, and I think that humility is what's going to allow you to get to that place where whatever talent you have, it's going to supersede it, because talent only gets you so far. You have to be able to be around people who are better than you. There's a strong need to have people who are better than you around you in order to reach those next levels. Because if we don't aspire to be greater,
That's true.
then we're not going to ever want people who are better than us around us.
That's really good.
That's what I find with many musicians who end up only working in their hometowns. Who only end up with a certain amount of fame that they're local musicians, right? Some people are comfortable just being the local musician, and that's something that they want. There's people who want to be the next Michael Jackson. Then there's people who want to they aspire for big things. They want to be Bad Bunny.
Huge.
They want to be the greatest thing that you've ever heard recorded, right?
It's true.
In order to get there, you can't do that just being a local musician. And I think that's such a challenging thing for many people, because that's not very common to think about. Like, oh, because I think once we get an ego, we kind of get very protective of it.
Can you define what ego is? And I want to touch into that. I don't want to cut into your point, but I really want to understand from an artist's perspective as compared to an athletic perspective the form of ego. And there's one or two questions I want to ask on that for our viewers here.
I think they're very similar. I think these two things do get similar. The difference in having competition and making art, that's where an athlete and an artist can be very different.
Yeah.
Creating versus competing is two different things that we do in our lives. However, when it comes to ego, ego brings everything together, meaning like the ego will be what makes us develop process. So like every athlete has the way that they train, has the specific people that they want in their corner, has the people who train them, has the route, the hill that they run up. Every athlete has their little idiosyncrasies that they need in order to be at peak physical condition. Just like every artist has their favorite way to train. The studio that they use, the mixer that they use, the producer that they use, the sound they go for. All those things fall under our egos as like, this is what I do. This is how I do it. This is how I get it done. So that's where things are very similar. However, in order to break that, right, to get to the next level, an athlete might need a new trainer,
new regimen,
a new
diet,
might need a new schedule. Everything. You might need a new, in order to go from a college level runner to an Olympic level runner. Everything has to change. It's a whole new level to it. So therefore you have to let your ego die a little bit. You have to kill it, right? To say, I'm open to a new process. I'm open to a way that I'm not really, admittably, I'm not comfortable with, but I'm going to learn because I've already put 10,000 hours. I'm comfortable enough to know that I have the ability to learn this new way.
I get you.
So that's where an athlete and a an artist can be very similar, a musician. But I think in anything, whether you're learning a new career, whether you're going to a new school, whether you're whatever undertaking you're choosing to go towards, you have to get people who are better than you around you and not be so protective of your own self-image, of your own beliefs of how you need to get it done. Sometimes the breakthrough that you need is going to come from someone else. It's going to be a perspective that you can't see because that's not how you think. That's not how your worldview is shaped. That's not the lens that you look at it.
So thank you for that. The one question I want to ask you and that I'm going to ask myself is, what are you currently striving towards that you want to be great in?
Right now, I just lifted 215 on my bench.
Nice.
So that's the most I've ever bench pressed in my life. I did one, just one. But that was, and I think I had more to go over. So that's something, benching is a passion of mine, an absolute love. And whenever I look at like powerlifters and stuff, I get very intimidated. Trust me. Like I feel like I feel so tiny compared to those guys. But
how many hours did they have to put in?
How many? It shows in their arms, right? It shows in everything. So that's something that currently I am going after. Okay. And just like 3 weeks ago, I wasn't able to do a single rep of 215 at all, just because mentally I didn't. It's scary once you start getting over 200. The weight is always heavy. It doesn't matter how strong you are. The weight, 200 pounds, is heavy.
Do you think then it just comes down to the mental outside of the physical, where you truly have to believe? Because I heard of a weightlifter, and mind you, I don't want to botch anything here, in which he spoke about he had to do a world record deadlift, and the only way for him to actually achieve that, which they physically told him it's not possible, is he had to imagine himself being like a mother, and that whatever he was lifting was taking a car off his children. And he talks so much about the mental state and putting himself mentally, as he was physically getting closer and closer to that weight, to be able to lift. that
I'm gonna
because
search
women,
into whoever that was. That's really
I would
cool.
Google it.
Yeah,
You probably know.
I don't
You
know
can
who
Google
that
it. You
is.
can Google
No,
that.
I don't know who
But
that is, but I'm gonna check that.
please.
I would agree with that 100% because something that's allowing me to get to that next, though these higher PRs, personal records, is the fact that my mental state is more clear than it's ever been. I'm more
It's
humble to
good.
the fact that I'm not the strongest person at all than I've ever been. So that's something that at 19, when I was probably in a better condition to lift way more, that at 30 now, my
Dang.
mental is so much better than it ever was back then. You know, so it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, the mental is so much is helping me get to these next levels that I'm trying to be great at.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And the question for me ultimately is, what is something I am attempting to be great in? And for me, after running, just a little spiel, I ended up getting a bit lost. That's really where I ended up finding God. I ended
Wow.
up finding common sense because my
Wow.
identity became you're a runner. Everything you had and you went for, you're a runner. So I was a bit, not a bit. It was an idol in my life. And the reason it was an idol is because there was no drugs that were preferably there because
The
my
high
dad
is
did
the
all of it
run.
for me.
The high is the run.
The high is the run. That was the bump. Basically what it was. I mean, when you're running at a level in which you can hit a sub 5 minute mile whenever you want, everybody has it where it's like, oh, I can lift this or I have this much money. It's like, no, I can run a 5 minute mile. I can run under a 5 minute mile. I'm really fast in this.
That is crazy.
But now, as I'm older, I start to see roughly the man that I'm becoming now. The transition for the discipline from an athlete to now working in various areas of my life. I think what I'm striving for to be great in is a great public speaker,
Mm.
to be a lot, to be more articulate. I'm getting back into poetry just recently with the recent prayer yesterday. Um,
That's what we did for our family time on
it's
Wednesday.
really, really great. And
We did poetry. That was time.
I think ultimately for me is just becoming more financially educated when it comes to looking into investments and being a very sophisticated investor. And there's 3 E's to it that you need. You can have excess cash, you can have education, and then you have to have experience.
Woo.
That was from Robert Kiyosaki's book, The Four Cash Flow Quadrants,
Oh,
from the Rich Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
No, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a book in that sequence, but this is one of them, and he talks about this from his Rich Dad, in which I don't think he ever drops his actual name ever. I'm gonna have to look into that, but he talks about roughly how you can have movie stars that have excess cash, but they don't have education, they don't have experience, and they talk about accredited investor, which is an individual. I believe the terms have now changed, but the book when it came out ended up talking about an accredited investor as an individual that makes over $200,000 annually for the 3 years consecutively, or has a net worth over $1 million outside of their primary residence, or jointly has with their spouse $300,000 made consecutively for 3 years with or without a primary residence that doesn't include $1 million of net worth. That way they're able to invest in certain investments. I never really went into it, but I had a small background in private equity, and that kind of changed my whole view of the world as far as how there's so much more money out there than I ever thought possible, how the 9 to 5 plays as far as getting paid as a 1099, seeing people with money just roll up to an office and just the way that they treat people as far as why do people buy into that. Like we could do a whole different aspect on it. But for me, I like the aspect of being able to be in control of my finances and understanding how to use debt, understanding how I can help other people by first being an example to myself and being able to help set other people. So many people talk about financial freedom, which is it is important, but I think a relationship with Jesus Christ is more important. Well, at the same time, I have to live my life and my doctrine. So for me, what I'm shooting forward to be great in is just being great and being more educated so I can help other people avoid pitfalls. I think that is something that's very central to me is I love helping people, but I need to be able to now look and see. I need to put some time in for myself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So, that's my thoughts.
Cool. All right. Well, that's all that we're gonna take with talent only gets you so far. Thank you for those insights. Right now we're gonna go to by the people for the people. We're gonna wrap up everything we're doing here really quick. But we've been seeing online. Everybody wants us to get Zion a mic. Shout out to Joshua for commenting on that.
Thanks, you, Josh.
It's everybody wants the dog to talk.
They love the dog.
We wish he could be in the shot. He's running around right now. He's going crazy. We got some stickers on the way, guys. So please, we're gonna have them available next week. On the next episode, we should have them up for you so you can check them out. So thank you for the comments that you guys have had. Please, we would love more interaction. So for everybody who's been watching, let us know, like, what are you hearing from us? What can we do to make the conversations more interactive? What can we do? What are some things that you've spent 10,000 hours on? What are some things that maybe you believe help people find God? How does common sense help you have faith? How does common sense prevent you from having faith? What do you think? Let's get some conversations going across all platforms. We have our TikTok, we have our Instagram, and now we have our Patreon that's under construction at the moment, but we got a link to it. Please follow us on Patreon. It's free at the moment, won't be that way forever, but we definitely want to thank everybody who's been responding, who's been adding to the conversation so far. We want to thank you for tuning in. We're at 38 subscribers on YouTube. I don't know where you guys are coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. We're almost at 80 followers on Instagram. Thank you to all of you. We're currently at 5 followers on TikTok. So if you guys have a TikTok, please follow us there. If anybody else wants to see us on any other platforms, let us know. Where can we reach you? What do you want us on? What do you want to hear? Common sense. But with that, I just want to say thank you guys for listening.
We love you guys, and if you guys want to see us use our talents, you mentioned I could sing. I wouldn't mind putting something together and practicing in order for me to sing, or us to create something, or even hear you rap. I think that would be...
Follow Past the Ox for that.
Oh, Past the Ox.
Follow SGV MVP on IG for that.
Yeah. Or maybe we put something on as far as poetry. Who knows? Like and subscribe, and thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you. That was the 3rd episode. Clap it up. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Caitlin Clark is incredible. If you like basketball and you don't know who Caitlin Clark is, you're tripping. If you're like me, who thought all women sucked at basketball compared to men at the professional level, you just don't know Caitlin Clark. I'm like what my friend Jordan just said. 3 months ago, nobody had ever heard of her. About a year ago, I would say during March Madness. Yeah, actually, Jordan's pretty accurate. 3 months ago is right. Around March Madness. My friend Dom was talking to me. I had told him women's basketball will never be exciting. I stand here corrected so badly because she's actually incredible. This is literally the female Stephen Curry, guys. Shooting from the logo. I've never seen a more consistent shooter outside of Stephen Curry than Caitlin Clark. It's one of the wildest things. So I just want to say there's a lot of sexism when it comes towards thinking about this stuff, that sports are for guys and things like that. But I think it's just best to kind of free up your mind because things are changing. It's the weirdest things. I ended up on a whole rabbit hole where I was watching high school women's basketball players dunking left and right. My mind was absolutely blown. I don't know what we feed kids these days that has them dunking. It's crazy. Athletes are not built the same anymore. So we are now in the realm where dunking isn't just something that only guys can do. Because literally 20 years ago, that was the case. Women just couldn't really do it. Some women could, some tall women could. But now we're in the place where it's, if you're a hooper, it's kind of, you can get ups. It doesn't matter. There's exercises that can literally help you get your vert up. There's things you can do. You can lose some weight. You can do things to go dunk a ball now. It's almost for everybody, you know, and it's not a racial thing. Go online. The best dunkers in the world are a bunch of white boys. It's the craziest thing in the world. So I just say this to say Caitlin Clark's incredible. And if you still think that basketball at the professional level is just a man's game, I think it's like there's a need for your mind to change. To give a shot to just check out a Caitlin Clark game, you know, just watch her play. Women's basketball is still hard for me to watch. I still think the WNBA is trash completely, but Caitlin Clark in no way is. It's the craziest thing. So that's just my little spiel on Caitlin Clark that I wanted to get out, because that was supposed to happen on episode 3, but we didn't get the chance, you know, and I don't want to miss this opportunity to say this, but Caitlin Clark, you're incredible. Thank you for being a part of the Common Sense family. Please subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram. And please, we need more TikTok followers. So follow us there too. We love you.
Do you feel what's really real? What is it real? So tell me what you feel, what you really feel. Do you feel what's really real? What is it real? So tell me what you feel, what you really feel. Do you feel what's really real?